based in Bangalore. Her engaging work has appeared in esteemed international publications like the New York Times, Al Jazeera, Nikkei Asia, as well as leading Indian outlets such as Mint Launch, The Hindu, The Travel and Leisure. A contributing author to the Bloomsbury Handbook of Indian Cuisine, her keen insights into the world of food make her the perfect guide for this flavorful discussion. Even you are fortunate to have our today's moderator, Deepankar Mukherjee sir. He is the key figure in India's publishing scene as the publisher and director of Readomania Publishing. He has overseen the release of over 120 titles, including several critically acclaimed and award-winning works. An advocate of creative expression, he also teaches creative writing and leads the successful young author program, nurturing the next generation of storytellers. The depth and diversity of this topic could keep us enthralled for hours, but I am grateful to our experts, guests, for shaping this into a concise and engaging 40-minute session, including a vibrant question and Q&A. Without further delay, I now hand over the floor to our distinguished moderator, sir. Over to you, sir.
Thank you so much. I'm super excited about this session because the history of food surprises all of us. How many of you know aloo, potato, is not Indian? I was surprised when I heard the first time. I'm a Bengali and we have a very, very authentic Bengali cuisine called shukto. I got a shock of my life when I heard and I realized that that particular food is not even Indian. It's not authentic to us. It's Portuguese. They got it to India and then we made something out of it. So that's the exciting part of food history. And linked to that are the places that created dishes and food that's iconic. And which is where we are going to explore with Ruth today. Ruth, quickly jumping into the book, which is this, by the way. Please see the screen in this, available downstairs or on Amazon, pick it up. How did the idea of this come to you?
So when we talk about restaurants, everyone has their favorite restaurant in every city. Almost every time I've discussed this book, the first question I get is, so is this restaurant from my city in that book? So unfortunately, no, not everyone's favorites are in the book. But the way this worked out is there is something called the Taste Atlas. It is an international organization which routinely puts out various lists, whether it's for restaurants, largely in the food space. So you can also have like a list that tells you the best pubs to go to or the best places to have a particular beer or to have ice cream. So in 2023, they released a list called the Taste Atlas Most Legendary Restaurants of the World list. And in that list, 7 of India's restaurants featured in that list. And that's what this book is about. Those 7 restaurants, selected by Taste Atlas, not by me, so don't come after me for that. Those 7 restaurants is what we have in the book. And we decided to do backstories of these restaurants because for us, most of these restaurants are a part and parcel of our lives. For us, going there, like going to an MTR and having a masala dosa is as simple as waking up in the morning on a Sunday and doing something special. But we wanted to do the backstories, and I have edited the book, which means I've also put into place the entire format in which we have presented all of these stories. I've written the stories for Mavali Tiffin Rooms, which is MTR in Bangalore, and for Paragon, which is in Kozhikode in Kerala. And we also have writers who are based in other cities. So we have Peter Cat, which was written by Priyadarshini Chatterjee. Om Rautre in Delhi wrote about Kareem's and Amrik Sukhdev in Murthal. We have Atish Nath, who wrote the essay on Ram Ashraya in Mumbai. And we have Anubhuti Krishna, who wrote Tunde Kababi from Lucknow. And the reason we chose these authors is because each of them has a connect to the city that they are in and where these restaurants are. And they have actually experienced these restaurants the way we know them, from their childhood, with their grandparents, with their parents, now with their children. And I've seen these restaurants evolve. And we wanted to bring out those experiences as well in the story of these restaurants. And that's the approach that we took for it.
That's very exciting. So let's hear from you about MTR. I've heard the full form for the first time, I'll confess. So what's the story about them setting it up, and what is the use they have that took them to the global list?
So again, making it to the global list is more of them. It's a survey that's conducted, and based on that survey and the number of people who speak about a restaurant, these restaurants make it to that list. So I'd also say that the list is based on a popular opinion of the international community. So it starts from there. But MTR, close to my heart, primarily because it's in the city that I am in Bangalore. And so they have, like most of the restaurants that you'll see in the book, it was about two brothers who decided to come into Bangalore from somewhere on the outskirts of the city and try their luck. They wanted to do this by becoming cooks themselves. So they became cooks in the houses of rich judges and rich people in the city of Bangalore. Till one day, one of those judges decided, listen, you do have potential. Why don't you branch out on your own? And so they started a small restaurant which did only idlis and vadas in a spot which is around a kilometer away from where MTR stands today. And back then, this year is 100 years since MTR was started. And back then, 100 years ago, which takes them to 1924, around that time, they were the first restaurants to actually provide car service. So you could actually get your idli vada in a car where you don't have to beat Bangalore's traffic at all. There were very few cars at that time. And it all started from there. And from there, that small idli vada restaurant became a much bigger space. MTR, as we know it today, was established. Today, they are well known for their breakfasts. They are well known for their meals. What initially started as a meal that had 52 dishes, if I am not wrong, which was served in quick succession on silver plates that weighed a kg with grape juice. Grape juice is still served no longer in silver tumblers as it was back then. And that's mainly because everyone decided, let's take a tumbler with us today, along with the great meal. Or let's take a spoon with us because it's MTRs, let's put it in our pocket. So everyone had a lot of sticky fingers, so they had to stop doing that for a while. The meal has now come down to 22 dishes, and that is not because they cannot do it, but because they were more mindful of the wastage that happened. And they were doing 1,000 meals a day. So even now on a Sunday, you can expect that much to happen. Somewhere along the way, with history that happened, there was the emergency. They were shut down for a while because they did not want to compromise on quality. And that's when they started the business of making masalas. So when they said that we cannot open our restaurants, they said, why not just make our masalas and sell it? Now that has hived off into a completely different business. The restaurant exists today. The main outlet is in Lal Bagh in Bangalore. And they have now gone international as well. So they have plenty of international outlets as well. So that's the broad 100-year history of MTR.
That's wonderful. How many of you believe that we are a nation that eats too much? Exactly. You know, we've made billionaires out of Swiggy and Zomato, man. I mean, we eat so much that they've become billionaires just by, branching on what we eat and do. I'm assuming all of you are from Nagpur. So let's take a call over here. If you had to pick one iconic dish or restaurant in Nagpur, which by the way is not there in this list, what would your choice be? See? Okay. Tari Poha, Savji. Of course not. In my time, it used to be outside Center Point and in Birdie. I don't know where it is now. So Tari Poha and Savji. Anything else? Anybody? Any restaurant name that comes to your mind? Lovely. Anybody else? Which one? The Dharampet one? Is this? Sadar one, right? Next to Smriti. The small one. Right. Is the Dharampet one still open or is it closed? It's closed, right? Okay. We'll come back to more about Nagpur, coming back to you, Ruth. So, there's a lot of resurgence of interest in food and history. What would you attribute that to in India right now? Oh, I think that's also on. Is that on?
Can you hear me?
Okay.
It's so small. My voice generally doesn't carry too well. Alright, resurgence in the interest in food. I think because it is a subject that is spoken about vastly today for various reasons. It can be related to politics and what's on your plate, it can be related to pricing of ingredients and where that's taking us. And also because I think these youngsters of today are more interested in our past than perhaps we were at that time. We are a generation that saw globalization and so we wanted to explore the world. Our youngsters are of the type who have seen the world, they've gone in it, but they want to go back to their roots and roots.
That's a powerful point, yeah.
So I think that's why there's a resurgence in the interest of history and considering the vastness, just like you said, there's so much to explore. Within a particular state, you have so many communities. Each community has their own cuisine. And that same cuisine can vary from your house to my house as well. It's all about exploring this. And when there's so much in your own home, why do you need to spend time outside? I mean, you should, I agree. But I think that's why it's happening.
That's wonderful. How many of you know that recipe reels come in India's top 3 most watched reel categories? So half of us, when we scroll on reels, are watching a recipe by anybody and everybody. What they're cooking, how they're cooking, what masala they're doing. It gives us immense sense of satisfaction to see how food is cooked. So, as Indians, we not just love our food, we also want to relish the way it's cooked. The chonk in the food, the way we add our masalas, the sequence in which we add our masalas, everything is relevant. So, that's the power of food in today's world. You know, one restaurant in this book is Peter Cat from Calcutta. Comes from a legacy of British era. What do you have to say about that restaurant?
Okay, so I have to admit, Peter Cat is the only restaurant I haven't visited on this entire list. But Priyadarshini has built up the story so beautifully in placing it in context in the way it has evolved. So while it started off as wanting to become a British style pub with live music, with great food, which is perhaps that era's version of what Western food is about, with those heavy cream sauces and all of that, with the sizzlers and with the, maybe I would say a very stereotypical idea of what Indian decor is all about, with your turban and liveried stuff, which still continues to this.
Absolutely.
So it was setting a stage at that time. It evolved with, again, these have evolved with the situation. So with the coming in of a communist government, having to pivot from not being a live music place, it has evolved, but stayed the same. And I'm actually borrowing a sentence which one of my writers on Northray said for Kareem's, where he said that while so much has changed, everything still remains the same. And I think that's applicable for all of these restaurants. And I think everyone has evolved in that really, really beautiful way. So it still has a legacy, but it still means something different to each person who experiences it.
Absolutely. And Peter Cat is a restaurant where people go back to live their memories. So there are generations who've lived through the restaurant. They've gone on birthday parties, they've gone with their first dates, they've gone after marriage with their wives or the spouses. So they go back reliving those memories as well. An interesting part, does anybody know which is the most famous dish in Peter Cat? I'll come back to you on that. Sorry? No, it's a very strange name. And I always question, why is it called that? No. It's chelo kebab. Right? And the dish, when they serve you, it's very interesting. And it's a very odd combination, which you'll never find anywhere else. It's kebab with rice. Rice. It's not pulao. Okay? And you see this? And when you eat it, yeah.
Butter makes all the difference.
Absolutely. Okay, you try to you do that at home, it'll come out so messy and so bad that God, let's go back to Peter Cat. Yeah. So when you discover these restaurants in cities, right, especially these traditional places, interestingly, you've picked up cities which are really, really old. You've picked up a Delhi, you've picked up a Calcutta, Bangalore, Kochi. How did Murthal come into this? Murthal is like, so how many of you know about Delhi and Murthal and the relationship that they have?
Just for the parathas.
Yeah, right? Yeah. So there used to be long ago only one dhaba, okay, on the highway which would serve outstanding parathas. It's like the paratha is almost size of one big thali, this big paratha, okay, and lassi, this big. Yeah.
Runs through all of these restaurants is that their basic masala recipes and spice powders are a very guarded set of ingredients, and that is very family specific. So tomorrow if you and I decide that we want to make our ghar ka masalas secret and patent it and then put out food, we are automatically going to make, I think we're going to be really successful in it if we're able to commercialize the entire thing. People like Kareem's and MTR and Murthal and all of them have done pretty much the same thing. I wouldn't put Peter Cat in that category possibly because I don't think there's too many guarded things. It's more twists and turns to what is really there. So what Kareem's also does is they say that Mughlai food, okay, what's the common perception? Mughlai food, very heavy, very unhealthy, it'll kill your heart. Correct? So they claim that Mughlai food is very healthy and it is in the usage of their spices and the way they do it. So in the summertime, they use thanda masalas and in the winters, they use garam masala. The whole concept is there. It is only the family member who comes every day to the restaurant and actually puts the spices into the food, tastes it before it goes out for the day. So I think all of this builds into that legendary story. The use of, say, the Mughal lineage as such, I think that could also, I'm not going to dispute whether they were not or anything, or anyone who makes those claims of any lineage. But I think also from a commercial point of view, what will really work, you take that up as well. So Bangalore has the concept of Iyengar bakeries, which is age old. But today you have Iyengar bakeries at every corner. It's not possible that lineage is there in so many places. Yeah.
Like the Agarwals in sweets. Okay, we have Agarwal in every nook and corner in Delhi where there's a sweet shop. Interestingly, I'm sure you know, I don't know if the audience knows, there's a very strong legal case running in the courts of India on who discovered butter chicken. Butter chicken. The two restaurants based in Delhi were fighting against each other. Incidentally, the origin of both of those restaurants are common. They were friends. They accidentally discovered the recipe and started off, and they branched off. And now the fight is on. It'll be very interesting if you follow the case to look at the arguments and counter arguments, which is full of history of this dish, which is very good. By the way, I was come to that, and West Bengal lost it actually. Odisha won, right? Yeah. I don't know how is it even possible. They don't even eat so many Rasgullas. We consume more. We should be, by that logic, given at least the benefit of commercial doubt. Coming back to the book over here.
England now.
In London, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. I agree with that. Okay. Now, I mean, again, a difficult one to say, but I am pretty confident UK will become an extension of India, Pakistan, Bangladesh in another 10 years to go. I mean, there's no way they can stop that happening. Okay. So, back to the book and here. Which is your favorite restaurants among these 7?
Why are you making me pick?
Everybody has a favorite child. Just don't publicly say it. So please.
I will go with my city, MTR.
There's bias. Your bias.
Okay, then I will go with Kareem's if you want.
That's good. I'll live with that.
Okay.
Good. So, coming back to the audience here again, and does Nagpur have food walks? Okay, food walks. No, not Indore has a food promenade. Okay, वैसे Nagpur has yes, we have a few smaller ones over here, but a food walk is a history walk or a walk which probably takes you on a Sunday, leisurely walk around. No, nothing, right? What is your view on the emergence or the sudden attack of food walks on Indians, which is happening in every city now, almost every big city, and sooner or later coming to every small city as well?
I think it's an extension of people wanting to find out about food and food history in different ways. And there's always going to be people who are curious, and there are always going to be people who are going to cash in on the curiousness. As long as they're doing it the right way, I think it's brilliant. So there should be more food walks, heritage walks, city walks, every kind of walk that you can think. At least we'll get our 10,000 steps in between all the eating.
Nature walks.
Yeah, absolutely. Nature walks.
Bangalore also some in Lal Bagh and all have done nature walks.
Bangalore has a ghost walk. Calcutta has a ghost walk. Okay, and in the world, there's something as disgusting as a sewage walk, which Australia has. I was surprised that why the hell would somebody want to go and smell the sewage in a walk? Seriously, man. So yeah, so all of these things happen. But yes, I believe every small city also now, and by the way, no city now remains small because we're expanding leaps and bounds, will actually have a food walk sooner or later. So let's say Nagpur has a food walk tomorrow. Which top 5 restaurants would you like to be covered, or food places would you like to cover? From Nagpur.
Checkers.
Okay. Haldiram's, right? We were just having a debate, by the way. Haldiram's paratha shop in Sadar, absolutely lovely. Yeah.
One Saudi Italy for sure.
Which one?
Jagdish is BCS Stadium.
Yeah, the one old VCS Stadium, the Sadar one. Okay.
They would give, during the cricket matches, they would be serving food.
Old timer. I don't think they exist anymore, do they? They are?
And
Okay.
go there on their menu, you'll see their whole history.
Ah.
Since 1980.
How many remember Arjun? Does they still exist? They don't?
No, it does.
Acha.
But it doesn't draw the.
Okay. They.
There's a place in Antoli called Anand Ashram.
Yeah, I was hoping somebody would say that. Is it?
No, it's very much there. I just ate the day yesterday. It's very nice.
That's a wonderful place.
Very Suruchi.
Suruchi in Calcutta, not on this list, but yeah, but Suruchi is there. Suruchi is also very unique in Calcutta. I'll come to that also. But let's finish the Nagpur part. What else? Santara Barfi, we're taking them back. You've got that in your. You've got that. Yeah, I take that. Santara Barfi also, I believe, is of 2 types. One is the Meva one, which is flavored, and the other which has got the kernels in it. So that's a better one actually. What else? Yes, I was saying somebody would call out Mohinpura was the place I was thinking about. Yes. Babbu's Biryani. Yes. Babbu's is another outlet now? Or Tanveer has one, right?
Galaxy,
Yeah.
like a restaurant, but the biryani thing.
Yeah. There's one more thing. Pan, the chocolate pan. Yashwant Stadium. Dollar Ki Tapri, absolutely. See, we already have a food walk. All you got to do is somebody pick it up, put it together and go sell it. Good. So you now have an entrepreneur also.
I wish I was here an extra day because when I asked for recommendations, I didn't get any. Now at least I won't go back today.
Oh, okay. Great.
Yes.
Absolutely. Coming back to Suruchi that he mentioned there, every city also has a restaurant which draws to the original or a typical localized cuisine, right? So let's Suruchi, and there are 2 others in Calcutta. I'm forgetting the name. One is I think Bhojahori Manna. They serve a proper thali, Bengali thali, which is a rarity at least for Probashi outside Bengalis like us. What would you say is something like that in Bangalore?
So the thing with Bangalore is it is a city that has blended a lot of cultures within it. So you can't really say this restaurant is definitive of Bangalore. You can say this restaurant is representative of Karnataka, for example. But if you're looking at Bangalore per se, if you're looking at the meat-heavy dishes, I would say all of the military hotels are a perfect representation of what is essentially Gauda cuisine. They are the original people from there. So it's the military hotels would be one. Then your places like MTR, while it's not Bangalore specific in terms of the way they make their thalis and the sambars and the rasams and all of it, that would be another place ideally you can go to. NMH would give you a very Udupi style meal, which is on the sweeter side. So you'd have that. So in terms of representation, Bangalore has representation of every place in Karnataka, including Bangalore. So it's a mix of everything.
Interesting. How many of you would? Yeah.
I have recommendation for Bangalore. People forget the place called Maratha Bhandar. Do you know
Maratha
Maratha
Mandir?
Queen
No, that's a movie theater. Maratha Bhandar is.
place with mutton chop and
Very much so. Yeah. It's
Yeah. There is a huge influence of Marathi cuisine on Tamil cuisine. And would you believe sambar is not originated, does not have South Indian origins? It's so I would agree to that because it is a very shocking discovery. Uh, so the Tanjavur Marathi community apparently converted a local form of sambar into what we have currently by adding some ingredients from the Maharashtrian. That's true, is it?
I would say it is true.
Okay.
I still say that it is under debate and there is equal measures.
On both sides.
they are also talking about drumsticks. Right?
Yeah. They are. So there is equal weightage on both sides of the argument. I think it will finally go the Roshagolla way and we'll have to see who prevails.
That's interesting. Okay, before I move it and open the questions for the audience, what's your take on Murugan Idli in Chennai?
Maybe let's hear that first. So honestly, I wouldn't want to diss any brand as such. Everyone puts in a lot of effort to create what they have to create. A lot of brands remain popular simply for the fact that they are popular. We have Rameshwaram Cafe in Bangalore, whose USP... Yeah, okay. That's a very different way of looking at it. They became very famous that way, but a reason they became famous is for the copious amounts of ghee they pour on their idlis. Like, it's one idli and possibly its weight in ghee as well. So, there are people for it, and there are people who will just look at it and say, What are you doing? So, I think every place has its place.
We have two quotable quotes.
Sarvana Bhavan.
Yeah.
Meet those ladies out there, that's fully Tamil style.
It is, but now the Saravana Bhavans, you have variations of that as well. So if you go from Bangalore, if you're driving down into the Tamil Nadu stretch, if you're driving down the Tamil Nadu stretch, you have no clue which is the real Saravana Bhavan and which is not. Everybody is a Saravana Bhavan with tiny twists in their spellings, or they will be like new, old, this area, that area. So there's so many of them that are there. Who's real anymore, you can't say.
Bawarchi in Hyderabad.
Bawarchi in Hyderabad. Yeah, absolutely. The man is in jail, by the way, huh? The Saravana Bhavan man. Yeah. Okay, so let's open it for questions. Any questions? Yeah.
I'm from Bombay, and the tragedy that Bombay has not been talked about.
We have Ramashri in the book.
No, we have.
We haven't spoken Bombay at all.
Yeah, okay. So we have one restaurant in this particular book from Bombay.
Kareem was a Kareem in Bombay. At one time, it's quite far back, so I don't know if any of you know. There was a wonderful Kareem restaurant in the Viti station. On the first floor of the Viti station.
So that would be Kareem's is a brand from North, and they may have an extension there. What is typical of Bombay is different, right?
So it's possible because Kareem's as a family did give out franchises at one point for Kareem's. But then there is also the Delhi wala Kareem is Karim, whereas there was another one and that went into a legal battle with Karem. And they had over 45 to 50 outlets at one point. So we can't really say which. I mean, I don't know the Bombay one at all. But we have a Kareem's in Bangalore now as well. And everyone's like, are you sure? Really? Someone go ask the family type. So we're not really sure which Kareem's that is.
But Bombay, again, has very good non-veg from Malwani side, right? So this amazing Mahesh Lunchroom, absolutely. Some amazing food to die for and very, very good Gujarati food. And if I was coming to that, Parsi food and some very good combinations of Parsi with Gujarati. So if you go to Fort, there's something called Pancham Puri. So the Pancham Puri is a classical mix of Parsi and Gujarati food. And all of Fort has multiple food walks delicious Parsi food. Parsi has been done by this big restaurant chain, right? Soda bottle wala. Yeah. Absolutely.
This chain of restaurant, new light rising like you have in Andheri, or you have in town, then you have this keema paws.
Keema pav.
With the fried egg on top. Keema with
Mumbai vada pav. Yes.
And I think the Koliwada cuisine also of Mumbai is something that's finally getting its limelight as well. Yes.
Marwari cuisine.
Yes.
In the midst of it, like food, we know food is nostalgia, food is history, food is narrative. Food appears and disappears also. In terms of so many of our traditional recipes have fallen behind the way, isn't it? So part of books such as yours, based on research, have you come across these restaurants where they have done stories of a certain tradition, of a certain popular selling dish, probably 10 or 15 years back, that is no longer in demand and therefore it's gone taken off the menu?
I wouldn't say restaurant. So there are a lot of dishes, like you said, the traditional dishes, from my understanding, which don't really feature on restaurant menus, especially legacy restaurant menus, specifically because they're meant to be had at home or made at home. So they never really made it to those restaurants in the first place. That would be point one. If it actually did make it to the list, for nostalgia's sake, I think they still remain. So I wouldn't say anything has been dropped out. And if it's dropped out, it could only be from a commercial point of view or possibly ingredients not available. So I can't really name a dish per se that I don't see on menus anymore. But if that has happened, these would be the reasons behind it.
Disagree with this thali thing. There is a certain homogenization and standardization in the name of thali given across India. Pan-India, the thali remains more or less in any popular joint, popular eateries. It's basically the same shape. You have your dal, you have your paneer, and if it is vegetarian, I'm saying, your papad and a couple of, aloo gobi ki sabji. So is this something that is good or bad? Which is trending?
Okay. Again, two parts to this answer. Personally, I think the thali is the most brilliant way of showcasing a cuisine in a quick and approachable manner. Because now I am dining alone. I've come to Nagpur. If someone tells me there is a typical Sauji thali or a typical Maharashtrian thali, I would go for it. At least I will taste 5 dishes rather than go to a restaurant, order 1 roti and 1 sabzi on the side. Now, having said that, the problem with thalis that I have seen is they have stopped being representative of a cuisine and has only become a means of pushing fast eating. So you will go and you will still see a dal, like you said, a dal and aloo gobi, which I think are the most dal. Everyone loves a good dal if it's made well. But an aloo gobi, come on, you eat it at home. Why am I going to pay? It's not cuisine specific. Everyone makes aloo gobi the different. So I would say if thalis start being actually representative of a cuisine, makes more sense. Till then, they become just a commercial venture.
And the ever-present gulab jamun in the dining.
Oh yes, absolutely.
Great. I think.
Yeah, thank you, Sir Ma'am. Your insight on such these different types of eateries and their history, I hope everyone has enjoyed a lot because I could see their participation in the topic. From that only we could get it and how much interested they were in this topic also. Thank you.